Hey, welcome to the session when Plan B goes wrong, avoiding the pitfalls. I'll start again here. Hey, welcome to the session when Plan B goes wrong, avoiding the pitfalls with DR as a service. My name is Sam Woodcock. I'm Senior Director of Cloud Strategy at Island, and it's great for you to join me today. Thank you very much, and we're going to jump straight into the session. So I want to start off, and obviously, as everyone knows, we're continually in a fast-paced world. It's really driven by technology. And now, kind of more than ever, businesses are relying on those IT investments that they make to perform without disruption. Because if they don't perform without disruption, then it can have impact on revenue, reputation, and competitive advantage. So it's increasingly more than ever important that we have a great availability strategy for our applications and our business so that we can remain competitive and remain in place in the industry as well. And the reality is that businesses depend on mission critical applications on a daily basis. I'm going to throw up on screen here a few examples of applications that you most likely rely on as a business today. Email being probably priority number one for a lot of members of your organization. They expand through to CRM systems, payroll, recruitment, time management, business intelligence, the list goes on, right? So if you look at this slide and think to your business, what is the impact if these applications are offline? How long can you be offline with any of these applications before it starts to impact not only your internal users, but also external customers and your business as a whole as well? So again, really critical to make sure that we have a great availability strategy for your organization in place. And when we think about disaster recovery, when we're often budgeting for disaster recovery as a service, some folks think of the least likely scenarios, things like a meteor hitting the data center, a plane dropping from the sky, things like that. These are unlikely scenarios, and it's important to think about the most probable scenarios when budgeting, planning, and putting in a solution into place for your organization. And it can help, obviously, have those conversations with the business about prioritizing this as a project within the organization. So if we think about those low probability incidents, things like floods and fires, meteorological, meteors, for example, again, highly unlikely, but they do happen. I've seen some examples in the news, actually, of the last 2 or 3 weeks of a major fire hitting a data center, for example. And if we think about the example here in terms of the pandemic, maybe we wouldn't think this was going to happen, but again, we're in this state and we're in this present day of this issue, and we're working through it obviously as well. So again, these things are low probability, but they still may happen, and so it's important to have something in place. But again, the most highly probable pieces are the things that you need to be concerned about, the things that you need to put a solution in place for that's going to enable you to recover as an organization. So again, some of the typical ones that we see, things like hardware failure and capacity. We see things, for example, like hard drives failing. They are going to fail at some point. It's just a matter of time. And we're seeing hardware failures being kind of a common occurrence for organizations. Obviously, with the times that we find ourselves in as well, capacity can be an issue if you need to get more capacity on demand with manufacturers. And obviously things like power failure and cooling are big issues as well. But I think some of the common examples I'd like to call out here are things like human error. We see this, for example, from a backup perspective. We see that from a disaster recovery perspective as well, that human error is a common occurrence, and we need to put a solution in place as well. And obviously common ones like ransomware and malicious insiders wishing to do the business harm. These are constant day-to-day threats that we need to have a solution in place for as well. Lastly, communications. Networking is the lifeblood of application connectivity, making sure that your customers and your users can connect to those applications successfully. And so what happens if those communications break down? How are you going to get your customers and your users to connect to those applications as well? So again, important to put a strategy in place that covers both high and low probability disasters as well. If we just cover security, for example, some statistics on screen around ransomware, for example, increasing by 97%, businesses being hit by malware and being taken offline. These are things that you see in the news every single day, if not every single week. And so it's important, again, to make sure that we have a strategy in place to cover those pitfalls and make sure that you can recover successfully as an organization. And part of the good news is, and why we're speaking today around our disaster recovery as a service and our thoughts and our thought leadership around that, is that 96% of organizations and companies that actually have a trusted backup and disaster recovery plan are able to survive things like ransomware attacks successfully. And so what we did actually, taking our experience, we have 12 years of experience in the disaster recovery space, but we wanted to hear directly from IT administrators and IT organizations of what they're seeing in terms of their disaster recovery planning and solutions as well. So we did a survey. We're going to look at the survey results in a second, which is over 1,500 IT professionals. And we asked them a variety of questions around their current solution, how it's going for them, where they'd like to improve. We're going to run through some of those survey results and pick out some interesting pieces to them. So if you look at the first one, organizations generally are replicating from a disaster recovery perspective, and they're doing that to a variety of different places. The predominant way of currently doing disaster recovery is to a secondary data center location. Actually, nearly 60% of folks still doing that to a secondary location. But what we've seen over the years in terms of survey results is that more and more of those organizations, as their kit becomes end of life or the data center becomes end of contract, for example, they're looking at new options, new ways to do what they did before in a better way. And where they're doing that is they're turning to cloud providers such as Island, for example, being VMware based, or looking at public cloud options for disaster recovery as a service. And the main reason that folks are doing that is because there's significant cost savings in terms of not having to pay for compute that's just sat there ready to go, and simply using compute and storage on demand as needed. So we're seeing that grow and grow over time, and that's kind of seen out in these survey results as well. But what I thought was interesting about this slide was that 22.7% of folks were relying on backup for disaster recovery. And in our opinion, that is kind of a recipe for potential disaster in itself, because backup is built for a specific use case. It's built for getting data offsite. And as long as you have your primary location available, you have the option to recover back to that. And that's really good and should be in place for a lot of organizations. But where we feel that disaster recovery is needed is because disaster recovery provides you with a platform to recover the applications in a secondary location, has all of the networking considered, all of the security considered, and all of these things in place to enable you to bring those applications up should that primary infrastructure be offline. And if you think about those high probability incidents that we touched on, things like hardware failure, communications issues, data centers being offline, then you need a secondary location to rely on to fail over to. And so we feel that 22% should be looking at a disaster recovery as a service solution, and I believe they more and more are from their perspective as well. So that's an interesting one to consider. What are you doing for backup, and are you doing disaster recovery or relying on backup for disaster recovery as well? If we look at back to my point around high probability and low probability, the reality of what's actually happening out there with customers, this is again part of the survey results where actually if you look at it, the predominant way that folks are actually seeing disasters occur today is through accidental deletion. It's actually 37%, which is very high. And if you think about that, what is the impact if some data is lost or an application is impacted by accidental deletion? Hardware failure being a large one as well. Again, making sure that you have a disaster recovery strategy in place that's going to give you the hardware on demand to be able to recover the business is really, really critical. Power failure happens, cooling happens, things like this that are really critical to have a solution in place. And again, we touched on the amount of security incidents impacting organizations. You can see a high percentage of ransomware and malicious insiders impacting organizations' data as well. So again, there's a myriad of reasons why you need a disaster recovery as a service solution in place. And again, the results bear out that these things happen. And you may be asking, well, how frequently do these things happen? Maybe it's once in a blue moon. And actually, I thought it's pretty interesting when we asked the question, when did the outage occur to a lot of the businesses? Only 32% said more than a year ago. And the majority were actually in the last year, and some in the past 3 months as well. You can see nearly 20% of folks in the past 3 months had suffered one of these outages. So again, asking you, what would happen if an outage happened on one of your primary applications in the last 3 months? What would you do? How would you recover? And how would you recover successfully for your customers? So to summarize that, again, 2/3 of the group had experienced an outage within the last 12 months and half within the last 6 months. So again, these things happen, and they happen pretty frequently. And again, reinforces the point why a strategy is needed that can be validated and utilized when you need it as well. So these things happen. There's a myriad of different things that happen as well. So to build confidence, it's important to test. And we actually asked the question, do you test your disaster recovery plan? Do you run drills? What would happen in the event of an outage requiring failover? So if you look at this, 30% are doing it sporadically. Some are doing it quarterly. The majority, I would say, are doing it annually as well. So What I thought was interesting here is that it's good to see that organizations are testing. It's really critical to do that testing to build confidence that you can actually fail over and it's going to work for your organization. Your customers are going to be able to connect to the applications. Your business is going to continue as normal. For the folks that are doing sporadically, it's hard to validate and actually understand whether it's going to work out successfully for the organization. And also how long it's going to take to recover successfully. We always talk about recovery time objectives. If we're not testing frequently, we can't really generally understand how long it's going to take to fail over to the other side, for example. So what we would encourage from this result is to test more frequently. Testing is the way to validate, are all the steps that it takes valid? How long does it take? Does my application perform successfully? Can it be accessed from a networking perspective? What does the security look like within the disaster recovery site? All of this can be borne out through testing. And what I would also say is that it's a worthwhile exercise to make sure that testing of your disaster recovery plan is part of your change control procedure. It's part of your application rollout plan as well. So as you're updating your applications, you're making changes, it's important to make sure that then you retest that application from a disaster recovery perspective to make sure that you can meet your SLAs and you can meet your objectives as an organization. So again, I think organizations are moving more and more to more frequent testing, and we're going to run through why that is. But again, we would really encourage organizations to make sure that this is a first-class citizen within their application and change control procedures as well. So to summarize that, again, 57% are only testing annually or at less frequent intervals, and 6% actually didn't test DR at all. And again, if you can't test, we can't really have confidence. You may need to go and actually work around that solution without utilizing your DR solution as well. And more importantly, when we actually then drilled in a bit further into that testing and actually understood what was successful and unsuccessful about that testing, it was staggering for me to see that 44% of folks actually saw that their disaster recovery solution may be inadequate. And a great deal of folks here, you can see in the charts here, actually suffered issues that may result in downtime or poor performance or long recovery times as well. So again, this really kind of, back to the earlier point, shows that you need to test more frequently so that you can uncover these issues from day one and resolve them as quickly as possible. And also just testing and understanding what it looks like will enable you to fine tune the plan so that it works better for you when you actually have to rely on it to restore your mission critical systems. So again, it's really key to do that testing to make sure that we understand whether the solution is fit for purpose and is going to work for your organization. And again, we've got a summary here, but again, the standout is that a lot of folks, when they came to do that testing, found that it was kind of inadequate. And so we would really encourage you to do that testing, understand what the impact was, and work to resolve that going forward as well. And a couple of the things that we saw through that testing were related to things like application performance. So it may have successfully recovered the application at the secondary location, but maybe didn't perform as expected for the customers and the users of that application. Networking is a challenge. Networking is the critical aspect of disaster recovery. Being able to access those systems either through client VPN or public IP address, things like that. It's important, again, to test that so that you can validate, is the networking in place to enable folks to use those applications once they're in the secondary location. Validating data integrity is key, making sure that maybe you restored your database, but is it to the right point in time? And is the data valid and accessible from the application perspective? So again, there's a lot of things that testing proves out. It's never going to be maybe perfect from day one, but again, testing frequently enables you to understand where the challenges are and resolve them up front as well. We're also asked our survey folks as well around failback. So one of the critical aspects of a disaster recovery solution is the ability to not only fail over and understand that that's going to happen successfully, how long it's going to take, but what does the process look for failback? How long is that going to take? Am I going to run into any networking issues or VM configuration problems or compatibility problems? And we're seeing this specifically in the public cloud market space where customers replicate their VMware-based workloads to a completely different platform. And that has challenges in itself for failing over, but also has more challenges in terms of fail back. One of the biggest ones that we've seen is, for example, if the customer needs to reseed all of their data back to the primary location, often those cloud providers charge you high egress charges for those pieces of bandwidth. that can be an impact from a failback perspective. And we're going to work and show you how the island approach is slightly different to that. But again, it's important when you do your testing to do a test of the failover process and the failback so that you can understand the whole life cycle of the disaster recovery event. So hopefully some of those statistics have resonated, that maybe you've seen some of these things in your organization. We're going to shift and talk about how Island as a provider can help solve some of these challenges and help enable you to kind of bring your disaster recovery service forward in terms of its capabilities as well. So a little bit about Island. We've been in business for 25 years. We've actually been focused on cloud and disaster recovery for the last 12 years. And we're operating in 11 global cloud regions today. So what this means to you is if you're operating primarily in the UK and you need to make sure that your data stays in the UK, you have the choice of either London and Manchester to replicate your data to. Likewise, if you have European or North American or Asian data center locations, you can choose those locations as the target to make sure that not only we meet your data sovereignty and compliance needs, but also that the users and the customers have the right experience from an end user connectivity perspective. Being closest to the source is always the best way. And so we can give you this choice to make sure that you can replicate successfully and provide the outcomes that you need. We also provide 100% availability SLA on our platform, so we're always going to be there to replicate the data. And when you need to rely on Island to spin these things up, we're going to be available as a platform. And more importantly as well, we support you through that journey from pre-sales through to the deployment and then on an ongoing basis so that you can fully get up to speed with the technology, put it in place, test and validate, and make sure it's successful for your organization. We're providing that to you as well. Now, Island offers disaster recovery as a service, but also offers other products in terms of data protection, including a variety of backup products built for VMware-based on-premises environments, as well as Microsoft 365. And we're also powering innovation for a lot of customers with our secure cloud hosting platform, our infrastructure as a service platform, where a lot of enterprises host 24/7 mission critical systems on a daily basis. So there's a lot that we do, but I guess the conclusion here is that when you're looking at data protection, it's probably not just one environment that you're looking to protect. You've probably got a range of different environments, and that's where a range of solutions from Island hopefully can help you achieve your data protection objectives. And we have a lot of experience in terms of data protection. For the last number of years, we've been seen as a leader by Gartner in the Magic Quadrant for disaster recovery as a service, and also seen as a leader by companies like Zerto and Veeam from a disaster recovery perspective as well. So we have a lot of expertise, and that's helped us understand how to shape solutions for organizations going forward. Today, we're looking at disaster recovery or secure disaster recovery as a service. And what I wanted to start off with is to talk about how Island can help reduce risk for organizations. So one of the key things with some of our technologies is it enables you to replicate data from point A to point B in near real time. And so what that means to a business is that if they ever have to rely on the solution from a failover perspective, you're reducing the amount of data that's lost by that organization. We're seeing some customers with 5 to 10 seconds being the amount that we're replicating successfully to the secondary location. With the solution, we can also provide complete protection. So we're enabling the ability to protect the entire site. Or if you just want to start off with mission critical systems or business critical data, you can do just that with the solution as well. So it's very granular. With all of our solutions, we're enabling you to recover quickly. So often you can recover applications in minutes. And again, back to my earlier point around testing, this is enabling you to understand exactly how long it's going to take to the minute and second. And you'll see here, increasing the confidence. So with the solutions that we put in place from a DR as a service perspective, all the technologies that we leverage allow you to do that testing at any point in time. It can be done during business hours. And you may think back to previous solutions you've got in place where you have to bring IT staff on call or on a weekend to perform this testing because it's been intrusive. The reality is now with these cloud-based solutions, we can allow you to test at 9 a.m., for example, or in the middle of the business day. And again, it won't have any impact on the organization. And the result of that is, again, building confidence in your DR plan and understanding how long it's going to take to recover successfully. Again, all of these things combine to help you reduce risk as a business. Ultimately, also, we want to provide that value, but we also want to save you as an organization money. So with our solution, obviously, it's eliminating those costs of a secondary data center. And if you think about all that's in that secondary data center, including networking gear, compute infrastructure, security infrastructure, the list may go on. All of that can be eliminated, and with this solution, you simply pay for storage. The compute capacity is only paid for based on consumption when you ever have to use it, which hopefully is maybe your quarterly test or on a very rare occasion from a disaster recovery perspective. So again, helps you eliminate costs. And again, back to my point just now, you only pay for what you use in terms of storage and compute during a failover or test. So again, saves significant money for a lot of organizations. Back to that survey result of 60% of folks using a secondary data center, there's a lot of cost savings to be had by looking at the cloud-based DR solution. And ultimately, if you're leveraging a service provider like Island, who has experience in DR as a service, who's taking care of a lot of the elements that you may have to or had to traditionally looked after, then it's allowing your IT staff and your organization to focus more on the production side of things, the revenue generating activities, the innovation. So this has a very tangible benefit on organizations. And ultimately, also, if you have a great competitive advantage in terms of availability, you've got some of the best kind of availability in the industry, you're unable to recover quickly. Again, this is a competitive advantage against potentially other people within your space. So again, helps you reduce risk, save money, and ultimately drive revenue with the solution. So we're going to take a look at a couple of things that you can see within the Island Secure Cloud Console. And the Secure Cloud Console is where you can manage your disaster recovery solution on a day-to-day basis. So back to my point just earlier, with our Zerto-based solution, for example, we're performing near real-time replication to the secondary location. This means, again, data loss is limited to the seconds, potentially 5 seconds, for example, and means that you can successfully recover your business back to that point in time and keep going as an organization. And within the Island Secure Cloud Console, you can see this recovery point objective in real time, and you can also see it historically for the last year. So if you need to report on this information to your customers or your internal stakeholders, it's a click of the button away to get that information as well. What we also provide with this service as well is what we call our 30-day journal. You can have a smaller journal level, or you can have up to 30 days. But what this gives you is, as we're replicating data every 5 seconds, for example, it's storing those points for the last 30 days. And so what that means is, imagine a human error has occurred or a ransomware incident. You don't want to recover to that specific point in time when that hit. You probably want to go 5 or 10 seconds back. Well, the journal enables you to do that and simply rewind time and get back to those files or workloads and recover them successfully to the Island location. Again, if maybe it's been a weekend and you've discovered it on a Monday morning, you can again go back maybe 1 or 2 days and get that data back as well. So this is really giving you that granular ability to recover data, which helps in a disaster recovery event. Again, we also provide that complete protection. So a lot of organizations choose to protect their entire location. Again, due to the cost-effective nature of the solution, they can seamlessly protect their tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 applications. But we do have the ability here to protect individual applications. So you can decide, hey, first project is going to be making sure that I have a solution in place for my tier 1 systems. And then we move on to the next tiers. But at all times, you have visibility into the protection status. You can see that data is being successfully replicated, what the recovery point objective is, whether it's meeting its SLAs. All of this information is monitored and available to you through the console as well. We also keep track of any recent testing or failover actions. And so one of the things you can do, which is pretty nice, as you may see in the screenshot, is you can set a test reminder. So if you decide one application needs to be tested every month, another application can be tested every 6 months, you can define that here and the console will alert you when your next test is due. So it keeps track of all of those actions and helps you achieve your testing goals and your failover goals as well. The orchestration is really critical, making sure that that plan is orchestrated and built into software. We ran through with the survey results some of the issues folks had related to application performance, networking issues, things like that. Again, by testing these things, we can play those things out and understand where the challenges sit and resolve those prior to you actually having to rely on this. And so fine-tune this plan in software, as you can see here, and define the order in which applications begin within the DR site, and then within those applications, how each workload is brought up, where it's placed into from a networking perspective, and how it's then accessed from a end user perspective as well. All of this is built into software so that you can click a button and then bring that plan up and running. Again, makes it very, very quick to achieve, and again, you can validate it ahead of time as well. One of the things that you get after any test that you perform with the Island solution is a detailed testing report. And this will again detail the recovery time objective achieved. You can see in my example, hopefully achieved a 4 minute and 32-second recovery time objective for this application. But again, this is a really nice report to validate you are doing the testing. You can send this to the stakeholders within the organization, as well as external folks who may need to see this. It will detail all of the steps that you took to perform the testing. You can validate were the virtual machines and workloads spun up in the right order. So this is a really nice report to validate that. And you can also inject your own notes and details into this report. So if you've done some external testing with end users and done additional steps as part of your organization's DR planning, they'll be built into the report that you can then send on across to all of the different teams as well. And again, back to the survey results, it's really critical to test to validate that this is going to work successfully as well. Now, recovery, as I said, once we've validated the recovery time, we need to perform a test or we need to do a failover. This can be done from any device. As you can see, I'm doing this through an iPhone here. Anytime you need to do a failover or a test, you have the ability as an organization to then pick out that orchestrated DR plan, choose which checkpoint you wish to go back to, and then initiate it and get your organization back up and running. So it's really seamless, really easy to do that testing, and also to get your organization back up and running. All available through the console here, as you can see. What's also critical, we've mentioned this a lot of the times throughout this presentation, is those folks moving more and more towards cloud-based solutions. What we do from an Island perspective is we use a tool called Island Catalyst. And what Island Catalyst does is it understands your storage needs. And again, we can right-size those to your specific use cases, whether that's everything or tier 1 applications. We can also understand your CPU and memory consumption information historically as well. And again, because we only charge for that when it's actually used, that's saving you from a monthly perspective. But then we can give you predictive failover costs and predictive test failover costs with this tool so that you can understand what that will be if you ever have to use it for an hour or a week or a day through the console as well. At all times, we show costs so that you can understand that. We don't want you to be surprised by anything. This is all available to consume in real time through the console interface as well. I've mentioned support. Support's really critical. Back to my point just now around Island Catalyst. Catalyst is stage 1, where we're really using this tool to understand your requirements, make sure that everything's compatible, understand the sizing, understand the cost. This is part of the journey, but then we pass this through to our deployment team to get you up and running, get you utilizing the solution, understanding how to leverage it, performing testing, and then our support team is always available to help you during test failovers or live failovers as you need it to make sure that this is a success for your organization. And I think this is a really critical aspect, is the service that we provide to make sure that you're not just getting the technology, you're getting to the outcome that you need as a business. We also realize the importance of security. So what we do on the Island platform is we build in a whole range of different security technologies at the DR platform level, including encryption at rest and vulnerability scanning and malware and antivirus. There's a whole range of things that are in play, because if you think back to the example where organizations are failing over due to a security threat or a security incident, you don't want to fail over to the DR site and then find that be vulnerable or open to attack. So what we've done is we've built in all of these core technologies that you can simply leverage. And that means your applications are protected when they're running on our secure cloud platform. So this is all built into the offering. We also have a wide range of compliance certifications, over 20 different certifications. So whichever industry you find yourselves in, we should have the certifications and the badges that you need from a cloud perspective. We also have a dedicated compliance team that can help you answer questions or work through audits that you may have to build confidence in our solution as well. A couple of other points I'd like to make here as well is that we have two approaches. We have a self-service approach where we onboard you and guide you, but then provide you with access to do DR testing and editing of replication jobs and things like that. And this is a great solution for a lot of folks who have that technical knowledge and who want to have some hands on the infrastructure and the DR planning. But we also have a different approach, which is our autopilot managed service, where we'll provide full managed onboarding, design expertise, we'll install the software, we'll define the plans, we'll test those plans, and we'll make sure that they work for your organization. So there's really two approaches. And by speaking to us, we'll work out which works best for your organization together. Finally, we have a quote here from a happy customer, Stena Drilling in Scotland. They moved to our DR as a service offering. They specifically liked our experience and technical expertise, and they leveraged Zerto's continuous data protection to protect their workloads that are disparately spread across different locations as well. So I hope this has been really interesting for folks. If you'd like to see more, we have a dedicated page here, island.com/free-computer-world. This is where you can find information about test drives, more information about DR services, as well as other data protection products that we have. So definitely visit this URL to find out more information as well. For the folks who've reached the end here, we'd also like to thank you for your time. We're entering you into a prize draw, and watch out for an email from our marketing team if you're the lucky winner of a Ticketmaster £100 voucher. So thank you very much for all of your time, and I believe we're now going to go into Q&A. So looking forward to your questions. Thank you.